Hi, welcome to tutorial number 34 for CSCI 130 Introduction to Programming here at the University of Wisconsin Parkside. Now we're working on chapter 13, and the main thing that we need to learn from this chapter is the use of functions and subroutines. So function procedures or sub procedures, as they call it in the book. The main difference between those two is that functions are gonna return a value. What there are is independent piece of code that we going to write. Now, until today, what we're doing is programming some objects. For example, when we double click on a button and we want to program the button, then we just start writing code. So what we're actually doing there is a uh, sub procedure. And if let's see over here. Let's go over here. Then, for example, if I put a button on this phone and then I double click, you see it says here private sub. So this means I'm writing a sub procedure, but this is associated with clicking on button 1, and then this is what I want to be executed. So now what we're doing in this chapter is we're writing independent subs and functions, so they don't need to be, inside one of the objects that we're gonna define. So let me delete this and this button for now. Okay, so um, they have a nice introduction in this chapter that they say, well, let's suppose that we want to design an application that is going to have a lot of code, so maybe it's going to be too complicated to understand when we write a lot. And they say, well, what about if we divide that code in little pieces, in little segments, and then we give some names to those pieces or those components, and then we call those procedures, like steps. Let's say that um, I don't know, I need to something as simple as I need to compute the salary of an employee, like the one that they have in this chapter, and then I need to know if they have overtime. So maybe you can have a procedure that is gonna go and collect the information. And then my next procedure is maybe computing the salary and that information determine if there is an overtime. And then my last procedure is going to be something that um, relates with displaying the information on the user. So then when I program the button that is going to do this, I just probably going to call the three procedures, and then it's going to be very easy for me to read, and the code is going to be in another part of the program. So we're going to see an example soon. So there are some built-in functions or procedures that we that we have in Visual Basic. For example, there in figure 13.2, there is something that says math.max x comma y. So the name of the function is max, and it must be inside some type of library that I call math. And then you're providing two values, x and y, and that function will return the number. So let's say that I call max 5 comma 7. So it's going to return 7 because 7 is the max. The same with mean if I do 5 comma 7, and what we have here in between the parentheses is what we call parameters. So functions, we provide some type of input and they return some output. So they process that information somehow and they return. It's the same concept of functions that we do in algebra and math. So here is the square root. You give a number, and then this somehow is going to compute the square root and return a number. We used this function in one of the previous chapters, payment. So we gave these three values and then we got an answer. Now we were using also the val function. Remember that we provide something like here in the examples, val of the string file and then returns file, and we got a tutorial about this. String format is um, also another function that we provide some information and then returns the the formatting of what we wanted. I think we use it to convert some strings into money. Okay, So something to remember, we're writing independent pieces of code that we provide some input. When we define a function, we expect an output. When we define a sub or a subroutine or just a sub, we don't expect an answer. Okay, so let's work on this example, and I'm gonna design the code for you. So here, let's suppose that we got an app that looks like this. It's gonna compute the maximum, so I'm gonna enter three numbers, and when I click on maximum, it's gonna give me which one is the maximum or which one is the greatest. So they provide an example here is 2, 34, and 5, and the greatest is 34. Okay, so let's work on that. So I'm gonna need 1, 2, 3, 4 labels, and 1, 2, 3, 4 text boxes, one button. Okay, so I'm gonna do something similar. So this is my form, changing the title. Okay, maximum. Okay, so labels. So this is number 1. Then I'm gonna have something for number 2. Three. Okay. Text boxes. Text box there. One. Let's see. We paste it. We got this. And there. So I got something for my input. So this is how I want to fit my function. Then I need something for the max. So I'm gonna put the answer over here. So we're gonna call that maximum. And then let's display that here. Okay, and let's put a button over here, and we got down maximum. Okay, so we don't need a function or we don't need a procedure. We can use what we know from previous chapter to solve this problem, but we want to solve this just by using some type of functions. So we want to double click where it says maximum, and then we want to define our first function now. Okay, so look, when I double click on the button, then we got the code over here to, as always, to start running. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go outside the 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 definition of the sub for button 1, and after the one that says public class form 1, and then I said, okay, I need a function. So I type the word function. Then I need a name for my function. I'm gonna call my underscore max. So I want that function to be like. Now my max function, I'm gonna provide the parameter. So the parameter says, okay, I'm gonna give you something function, and I'm gonna give you two numbers. I'm gonna give you x, and I'm gonna say this is an integer, comma. I'm gonna give you something else. I'm gonna give you a y that is also an integer. So what it says is, look, I'm gonna give you some numbers, and I want you to return an integer. And we hit enter, and look that that once I do the function, the Visual Basic gave me here the end function already, and it's complaining that I don't have a return statement because it's a function I expect that it's gonna return something. So what I'm gonna do, we're gonna say if x is greater than y, then we're gonna return something. I have an answer. Then return x. X is the max. Else return y. Okay, so we have a function. There. Let's check my function again. So here I'm giving, this is what we call the parameters. This is the input. This is the name of the function. Call it my max. My max needs two numbers, and then those two numbers is gonna select one of those as the return. So either returns x or returns y. How? Well, if x is greater than y, then x is my answer. That's my max. Okay, now let's see how is that we can use this to solve this problem. So this problem, what we have is we're gonna have three numbers, not two numbers. So the numbers that we're gonna have here, let's say dim num1 as integer um, comes from text box 1, right? Well, let's put the numerical value val text box 1 dot text, and then the num2 as integer equals numerical value from text box 2 dot text, then num3 as integer is the numerical value text box 3 dot text. Okay, so I got the three numbers. So now I need to decide which one of those is the max. So if I do something like this, my my underscore max of num1 comma num2, then I get the max for those two numbers, and then I could display that now on my text box 4 dot text equals to that, but it's only giving me the max of two numbers, right? So let's press F5 and see. So it's not solving what I want now, but we're getting very close. So this is 5, 13, 34. Now let's click on maximum, and it's giving me the max between 5 and 13, which is 13. What I need to do is, once I solve which one of these is the max, I need to compare that with the other number, right? So remember, this, I'm calling this function, so this becomes a number. So what about if we use that number to call my max again? My underscore max. Remember, my max needs two numbers. So, this is the first number, comma. So my first number is whatever is the answer of the max of the first two, and then I compare that with the third number. How's that? And that simplifies my code. So look, I don't need to be doing multiple if statements, because I can use that. This function is gonna first decide in here. This decides which one is the greatest of those two numbers. Once it's that decide, then I use my max again to compare that answer with num3. Okay, let's press F5. So let's see, 6, 12, 45. Now we got the 45. So if I have this as 60, then the max is 60. If this is 120, the max is 120. Excellent. Okay, so this is the example for now. Thank you. And on the next tutorial, I'm gonna show how we are gonna do the posting.